All right, welcome to another episode of the Real Shot 256. Thanks for joining. Thanks for being here. Tonight, I want to kick things off and talk about something that's been going on. As I mentioned in my last video, been talking about how the traditional markets and also the crypto markets have been pretty much in line with each other the last. I don't know. It's been a good while. Can't even really put a definitive number, but you can tell for the last at least year or so that the S&P, mostly the S&P, has had some correlation with Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. So definitely want to highlight that tonight. Also want to highlight a trade that I got into towards the third week of this month, April. A very unusual, tricky outcome that we saw with that trade. I'll let you know what that is. It was an options trade, the oil ETN. I'll let you know how that went, but it definitely something that difference makes a difference between crypto and traditional markets because with the uh, the oil ETN, there was some sort of fail-proof security, if you will, whereas Bitcoin does not have any of that. So definitely want to highlight that real quick in tonight's video. Also, want to definitely get in here and do a refresh of our current market numbers. Let's see. Looks like we are good to go. So we're sitting at 225, $2.25 billion, and that's up about 27 billion from last week. Also, 126 billion dollars in buying volume in the last 24 hours, and you can see that reflected here. I mean, just continuation of more buying power as the coronavirus in some states start to reopen. Coronavirus, starts to sort of flatten the curve and maybe even give back a little bit. So I do think that I do think that is going to be reflected in the markets as the money starts coming back in. And I did tweet about this on Sunday evening, or I think it was either Sunday evening or Monday super early. I don't know why I was up that early, but I was, and I tweeted out my thoughts on April 27th. That was at super early that morning. It's actually, if we open it up, it'll tell us 5:49 a.m. and before the markets open. And here's a series of thoughts, right? So Bitcoin started to surge over the weekend back above 7,700. So that brought three thoughts to my head. One is markets should open higher, and they did. Investor mentality at healthier levels. That is, that goes without saying. When you see Bitcoin coming back above 7,700, and then you see the markets open up on Monday morning higher than they did last week when they closed last week, and then also money obviously seems to be coming back to the markets, right? And we see that as an obvious sign. If we look at just the crypto markets, I mean, look at that, right? If we look at the SPY, look at the SPY also, and here's the correlation, right? So it opened right at the 200 yesterday, Monday, the 27th, right? So it opened higher, and let's look at what real quick what Bitcoin did here. Not to quote anybody's podcast over there, but let's see. Let's actually do not the 1 hour. Let's actually do the 4 hour. That's not what I want to do. I want to do the daily candle. So what did it do? It opened higher, but then it came back down. Same thing that we see with the SPY here. It opened higher, but then came back down, right? Actually, yesterday stayed in the green, but you get the drift. It's still somewhat correlated. Now Bitcoin's sort of losing momentum here. We'll go into the lower time frames to do a little bit more analysis on this, but we do see a clear rejection here of the 200 EMA here. That is something that we've been talking about for the last couple of weeks on this channel, and also been tweeting out these alerts for you guys on Twitter. If you guys haven't followed me yet, go ahead and look for me at the Real Shot 256. You guys can look at these updates. Mainly, I want to talk about this update here from last night. I was calling for I was calling for 7850 as sort of the catalytic event. If we were to start closing some 4-hour candles above or within this box here, then that would in my mind that should trigger something of a bigger move to the upside and continuation to our target, which I tweeted to you guys a couple of weeks ago. I've been telling you guys about this. Follow this thread because I was talking about how we're making our way back to 9.5, right? And what am I basing my thoughts on? What am I thinking when I say that? Well, if we look at Bitcoin historically here, we're going to go back a little bit, not that much, but just so that we can talk about this, we'll need our trusty Bitstamp chart here. Ever since we started the 200 EMA here back in June of 2015, right? We finally had enough historical data here to create a 200 moving average here. So ever since the creation and ever since we've been tracking Bitcoin here, we see that the 200 we've always been above and had quite a bit of gap in between the current price action, and the 200 EMA. But then, a big event happened back in November of 2018. We lost the 200 for the first time ever. Not only we do that, we lost the 200 simple, we lost the 200 EMA, and then we went down and met our very bottom around 3,100. What happened after that? We slowly, leveled off here, slowly started to make our way up to 13.9 up here back in latter part of June. But what happened is we see that Bitcoin actually, once it regained the 200, lost it for the first time, regained it, and then what happened? It had a pretty nice reaction off the 200. Use it as a trampoline, if you will, and started going off. We saw it kind of be tamed by the 55 for a few weeks, and then continuation and burst it through the 200 SMA there at that point, and then we went all the way up to top at 13.9, right? So why am I saying this? What am I basing it up? Well, the one time that we did this, so we lost the 200 EMA, both the 200 simple and the 200 EMA. Well, we went to 13.9. What are we doing here? Well, voila, we're actually doing the same exact thing. We're going and piercing through, see how that the first week rejection out the 200 simple, stayed below the 200, but finally regained the strength. These look like reversal candles here. If you've been following the channel, I'm big on these things, especially if you're looking at the weekly. But it just goes to show that living below the 200 EMA was not where Bitcoin wanted to be, and so the bulls came in and took over. We do see lots of buying volume here within the volume indicator. We got to regain the 200 and then pierced again. We're piercing through that 200 SMA here and finding support at the 55. Right. This is a new weekly. We just got this new weekly couple days ago, 48 hours ago, and now we are seeing that we are finding support right at the 21, between the 21 and 55. If we have to really zoom in there, but on the weekly chart, finding support between the 21 and 55. Our 78.50 call here. If we were to get within this box and again start closing at least a 4-hour, I'm going to be a little stringent. I don't want to see just a little wick and then reject. That's obviously going to be a rejection or reversal sign. Also notice that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 candles in the making in the green, weekly candles at that. So this just tells you this is a very, very strong extended run though. So just remember that. Remember this right here: 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we found big time reversal, right? So just want to point that out. This is our Bitstamp chart. If we go back to our trusty Binance chart, we do see same sort of scenario here. And then we also have, well, this might actually not be the one I'm looking for. This might actually not be it. Where is my indicator? Well, here, darn. Brain fart moment, guys. Sorry about that. Looking at the B here, looking at this B here. This is kind of where I'm looking for things to sort of end for Bitcoin on this run, on this particular run. If we don't reject off of this B right here, this green line, which would take us at about 9,500, somewhere around here. Yeah, around 9,500 or so, right? So this will be our very, very last target. Let's actually put a little box in here so we know. Right below here. Right. Okay. All right. That's what we need. So there we go. That's where I'm putting my eyes on. That's where sort of my technical analysis is leading me to believe that we should be finding the top right around 9,500. Right around there. Again, we can wick above it. That's again, it's fine and dandy. It always happens, but then we should find a reversal after that, and just stay within this huge, huge, massive triangle that we see here historically. If we go back quite a bit, we do see here that there's plenty of support down here, plenty of resistance on the way down here. All right, so and then at some point, this big structure here is going to break down or going to break out. With the halving coming up here in the next month, just a few weeks from now, about, I don't know, 3 weeks from now. Today is what, the 28th? Well, actually, less than 3 weeks, right? We should find the halving coming within less than 21 days from now. Anyway, because of that event, I do believe this could be the event that will catapult Bitcoin above this huge line, historical line of resistance here, and actually find its way up to higher prices and actually, not only challenge 13.9 over here, but also challenge the 19,000 eventually, right? I don't know if it's going to happen this year. Honestly, I don't know. I mean, that would be certainly, I wouldn't put it past Bitcoin, but I do think it's something that will eventually happen, but not in 2020. I don't know. I just don't see it. There's also plenty of talk. You guys have heard it, of a wave two coronavirus outbreak, which should be coming in the fall of this year, towards the end of the year. So that could definitely put a big damper on things, as it did recently. I'm not blaming this dip entirely on the coronavirus. There's other things that I think did influence it, such as people going into gold and other things. But not here nor there. I do think we're going to end it here at around 13. I'm sorry, not 13, but 9,500. That's kind of where I'm looking at. And again, the step one would be 78.50, and then step two would be 9,500. All right, and then I will be playing that accordingly. If I do see that we actually break above and start closing some daily candles at that point, above this here, it's either could be a bull trap, or it could be legit, right? I mean, we'll have to wait for confirmation either way. It's too early, too soon to even be talking about that, but I guess it's okay to mention it. All right, so that's our Bitcoin analysis. Kind of jumped the gun there, and went right into that when I usually do something a little bit different, where I talk to you guys about a particular piece of news that's out there. So let's actually break for a moment here and talk about this, because I do think that there is something important to mention. As I said earlier, the oil ETN closed in wake of negative trading in oil futures. So last week, a lot of people were just freaking out because of the price of oil going negative. Well, that's what people were saying, right? People were saying, "Oh, the price of oil went negative." Well, that's not really crude oil going negative. That's actually the futures contract going negative for the month of May. But those contracts have since expired. We're now on to different maturity date contracts, and so the prices have actually stabilized. But it had nothing to do with the barrel price of Brent oil. It had nothing to do with that, right? Crude oil still was trading around above $20 per barrel. I think somewhere in the lower 20s to mid 20s. So a lot of people were spreading misinformation and talking about how oil went negative. It didn't. Just the futures markets, or futures contracts, did go negative at the end of that trading session, right? So I wanted to talk about this ETN. The trigger, or the ticker, is actually OIL. And something really interesting happened to me here. I bought a call here, sort of around, I want to say, April 18th. It was doing quite well. It was doing quite well. I was about 50% in the green, and something happened, right? So the Barclays Bank announced on Monday, April 20th, that it planned to shut down the IPAT Series B S&P GSCI Crude Oil Total Return Index (ETN) or oil by exercising its call option, which allows the issuer to recall the ETN at its discretion and redeeming in full April 30th. Shareholders of the ETN will receive a cash payment of each share equal to the price of on April 23rd, 2020, the fifth business day prior to redemption date. So what this is saying is they're halting their trades, which it serves my call, the purchase of my call null, right? It voids it out. Is that as if it never happened? I'm not too happy with it because I was doing quite well with it. But then, they stepped in, and basically what they're going to do is they're going to exercise their call. They're going to pay everybody off. They're going to make everyone whole, indemnify everybody as if it never happened, right? And this is what I mean. This is what I refer to when I'm talking about how cryptocurrency markets do not have this sort of safety net, do not have sort of this guarantee if something goes south. Where in traditional markets, we do find that there is this sort of safety net. We do have FDIC, with the backing of the financial markets. If a catastrophic event were to happen, there is always something, to sort of provide some support, and that is something that, although I am bummed out because I lost out on some potential big gains on that call. I mean, like I said, it was going well for me particularly, and I was 50% up in the green as of the time when they decided to shut it down. So, um, I wish they would have let it go. I think they might have jumped the gun, and I do think the price of oil was going to stabilize as it did. But those guys, those big guns make decisions, not I. So, um, you know. Another thing to mention here that I think is worth it is at least 25 ETFs have closed since the market began its decline in February. At least 8 of those funds are oil related. So, this was not the only ETN or ETF that was, fell victim to the coronavirus. There was actually a few ETFs, and this apparently was the only ETN that was also affected by it. So, interesting times. Too bad for me, but again, they're going to make me whole. I'm not going to lose anything. At least there's a little bit of silver lining in this whole fiasco. So be careful, guys out there. Even even with traditional markets and traditional assets, you can still find yourself in a tricky situation. All right, so back to cryptocurrency. Let's talk about some other coins. I did see some people saying that XRP was actually running while everything else was stagnant. Actually, my argument is XRP is actually catching up to everybody, right? Because if we look at the price action from everything else, there's a prior run to today. If we look at BNB, BNB is kind of dead. Ethereum, nice little run up, stabilizing now at the 377 on the daily. If we look at BTC, nice run back in on the 22nd. So really, XRP is just catching up. I mean, it was pretty flat all the way through last week, and then yesterday and today had a pretty nice run up, catching up to the rest of the market, right? So, for those people who are calling for XRP to break out and going to 589 again, hold your horses. Not going to happen yet. It's just catching up. It's actually nice to see that it is catching up. But I do think this is it. XRP is going to have to take a breather here. And for that, let's actually go to the lower time frames and look at that big wick to the upside rejection on the higher price of XRP. If we look at the 2 hour, we're also seeing rejection. This might actually come back, right? So I'm not too excited about this one yet. If it closes above, if it closes, with a nice big size candle here, then I might start to look differently. But because it's too soon, I don't want to get overly excited. Let's look at the 4 hour. We do see a price rejection on this prior 4 hour candle here as well. We're seeing it all the way through the lower time frames, except from the 45. 45's bias to the upside. The 30 minutes, the really shorter time frames are calling something else. But again, these are shorter time frames. I rely a little bit more in this channel. I rely a little bit more on these higher time frames, relatively speaking. I don't like this big wick to the upside and rejection. We'll see where this one ends on the next 4 hour, and then go from there. All right, so we'll see. I mean, but it's definitely nice to see that XRP is following with everything else. It's not lagging behind like it was, it was doing back here while everything else was running. Okay. All right, so let me know what you guys think about that. What are you guys looking at? What are you guys seeing that perhaps I'm not seeing? Leave it down in the comments. Always like to chat it up with you guys, and just exchange and trade ideas. If you're not following me again on Twitter, the Real Shot 256, and then let's talk about some of these. I did enter another call on GE. And look at that, it actually did pretty well for me. I bought at the bottom of this triangle here, bought a call, small position there because there's always the chance that it might go down. The GE is having their earnings call this week on the 30th, I believe. So I do plan on selling prior to that because also Boeing is having um, their revenue call as well, and I don't think it's going to look very positive for Boeing at all, which should have some sort of effect on GE, since one of GE's main revenue drivers is building turbine engines for Boeing. So if Boeing doesn't do well and there's no demand, and no outlook or no better outlook for Boeing in the next quarter or two, then guess what? I do think GE is going to be affected by it. So I am looking to get out of it. I still have a little bit left, maybe tomorrow or the next day, left on this call, and then I will be looking to exit pretty soon after that. All right, taking a sip of water. Also, tankers. Tankers might be a good place to enter some longs or enter some call options or just some spot action there, because tankers are going to be holding and storing a lot of this crude oil that's coming in from the seas. So that might also be a good idea. And I do want to thank Francis for that tip. So shout out to you, my friend. Thanks for that. And let's see, wrap it up with some maybe some other cryptos. Tezos actually went over EOS for the first time, so that was nice to see that Tesla's still making ways up, right? So pretty good there. All right, so I think we'll end it there. Zoom also been killing it. It is having a nice little consolidation here, or rejection of this previous all-time high here at 182. Been writing this for a long time, since about 62, $64, something like that. Been writing it up and down, in and out. So definitely one to still keep an eye on. I do think, as I mentioned, I think before, once this pandemic is over and done with, I do think that we're going to see Zoom come back down to very low levels. Not to all-time low levels, but certainly to lower levels, um, since the pandemic is going to change some things around with when it comes to conducting business. I do think they are going to remain sort of an essential play for companies who want to conduct meetings, and that still are a little weary of the whole situation with Corona. And so I do think there is a good spot play for Zoom long term. All right, guys. So I think that is all I have for you guys. Again, if I miss something, leave it down in the comments. We can always address it on the next video. If you haven't subscribed, hit the subscribe button now, and let me know that you are following. And yeah, that's it. Hope you got something in exchange for your time tonight, and I appreciate you being here. We'll see you guys on the next one.